myself Aditya P. Tripathi. I am here to continue our discussion on the topic of financial shenanigans. This is going to be part 4 of our lecture series on financial shenanigans. In the previous lecture of mine, I told you about some of the techniques of financial shenanigans. We had a discussion about recognition of revenue. We talked about channel stuffing. We talked about round tripping. Now I'll extend my discussion on the same topic and then eventually we'll talk about the Harvard Business Review article, the most popular article in the area of shenanigan, which talks about the resorting towards shenanigans by accountants in the era of IFRS. When IFRS is implemented, then obviously there is a greater chance of avoiding these kind of shenanigans, but we'll actually look into this aspect of shenanigan from the perspective of HBR article. But before that, let me come to the techniques. I told you about the channel stuffing and in the previous lecture, and now we'll tell you about the real life example of that channel stuffing, the way a company did, the way a company resorted to this kind of technique. So Bristol Myers Squibb company, which is again a Fortune 500 company, it was investigated and fined by SEC. And what was the complaint against this company? The complaint alleged, among other things, that from the first quarter of year 2000 through the fourth quarter of year 2001, this company was engaged in fraudulent schemes to inflate its sales and earnings. So company was found guilty of getting engaged in a fraudulent scheme to inflate its sales and earnings, and in order to create the false appearance that the company had met or exceeded its internal sales and earning targets, what it did, it tried to create a positive impression about the company so that the Wall Street analyst earning estimates can be met out. So in order to meet out those expectations of Wall Street analysts earning expectations, so that there is a positive image about the company in the mindset of investor, this company resorted to this way of inflating its sales and earnings, and it inflated its results primarily by, what was the way out? The way it did, the way company resorted to this technique was, it tried to stuff its distribution channels with excess inventory near the end of every quarter in amounts sufficient to meet its targets. So they used to first of all find out their target, their marketing target, that this is my sales target, and at the end of every quarter, or just before the end of at the fag end of every quarter, they try to show the amount which is sufficient to meet its target by making pharmaceutical sales to its wholesalers ahead of demand. So wholesalers were not demanding from the company for those products, but since company had a target to show a consistent profit on record, what company did, they contacted their wholesalers ahead of their demand, and they improperly recognized the revenue to the extent of $1.5 billion from such pharmaceutical sales. And what happened? Why it was caught? Because this improper, or you can say this wrong deed was executed with two biggest wholesalers only. So there was a concentration by the company towards two wholesalers only, which were the biggest names, and they tried to somehow show the inflated revenue. And in connection with the $1.5 billion revenue, this company covered these wholesalers carrying cost. They said your carrying cost will bear, and they guaranteed them a return on investment until they sold the products. This is what I was trying to indicate when I was explaining to you the concept of the channel stuffing, that there is a side agreement between the companies. What they do, that suppose if I'm forcing you, I'm a manufacturer, you are a supplier, I'm forcing you to buy in excess of what you actually need. Why will you buy? And if you buy, you will show your inability. See, I cannot buy, because if I am buying, I'll have to store it. What about the carrying cost? Who will bear? Then I am giving you a lucrative offer. Yes, I will bear the carrying cost. Then second is, what about my investment? My money is being blocked. I am assuring you the return on investment until you sell out these goods. Then if I'm ready to cover up all your losses, I'm ready to take care of all your concerns, then obviously you will agree. And the same thing happened in case of this company. So in connection with the deal of 1.5 billion revenue, this company covered all cost which were actually claimed, which were actually put in front of them by the wholesalers, and in this way they executed this entire game of misrepresentation. But the company was fined. It was fined by the SEC, and the action was very severe. And all these cases, what is the objective behind showing you these real life cases? In any case, there is no intention to defame any company. Rather, if a company is being caught, if a company is being caught by the SEC, it means there is a strong conviction by the company to accept it. Yes, this has been taken and will take care of it in future. This should not be repeated. The stringent action were taken by the company towards the accountants, towards the internal auditors, and obviously it is going to strengthen their internal accounting system. So once a company is able to catch hold of these people, obviously this is going to ensure that in future it should not be repeated. And that is the motive behind studying all this. Otherwise, what is the point of studying shenanigans, their techniques? What is the point of studying it? The only point is, if we understand that what can be the wrong way of going into accounting, then only we can catch hold of those wrong deeds and take appropriate action against them. After this round tripping, another important aspect of our transaction is cookie jar accounting. This is another popular technique which is in the name of cookie jar accounting. Here what we do, it is a practice of income smoothing. We call it income smoothing. By creating reserves during good periods and utilizing the same during not so good periods, or what we call as bad periods, bad times. So there is a good time, there is a bad time for the company. So in this cookie jar accounting, what company is doing? Company is trying to create a container which is called a jar here, and they are trying to, and cookie is represented by, cookie represents your profit, your part of profit, your part of excess profit. So you are creating a container where you are trying to create a reserve during good periods. Suppose the company is in pink of its health, making good amount of profit. Then what company did? Company took some part of their profit and called it as cookie and put it in a jar, so that this can be utilized by the company when the time is not good, or suppose in future when the company is not having so good time, or what you can say when the company is facing the bad time in terms of profitability, then at that time these cookies can be utilized. Now the question comes, if a company is creating a reserve, there is no problem. Company is saying in good times we are creating a reserve just to make use of these funds, these reserves for bad times. That is also not bad. But the point is, are you informing your stakeholders? Are you informing the person who has appointed you for doing this accounting? Or you are playing a hide and seek game? If it is being disclosed to the investors, then there is no problem. If stakeholders are aware of it, that company has created a reserve, company has gone for creating a provision, there is no problem, absolutely no problem. But what if this cookie jar which you have created, nobody is aware of it? Only you know that. So what if you leave? You can also take that container out of the business. And that was actually the hard-earned money of investors. So practice of income smoothing. In some books you will find this, another term for this cookie jar accounting. They call it income smoothing. You are smoothing your income by creating some reserves during good periods so that it can be used in the bad period or bad times of company. And this financial shenanigan essentially aims at income smoothing. You are trying to smoothen your income. And it is basically based on this assumption only, that companies reporting smooth profits are viewed to be less risky by the investors than the companies with fluctuating profits. So you are trying to create a pattern for your income, that this company, my company, is consistently making good profit. And when you are doing so, in this practice of doing so, what you are doing, you are not reporting what you have received. You have received an income of 10 lakh rupees and you are reporting 5 lakh. You have decided to report 5 lakh every year. So don't you think that you are on a wrong track? You're not reporting what is the real situation of the company, because you have to show the true and fair picture of your financial performance. But what you are doing, you are neither true nor fair. So don't you think it's unfair? So you have to be not only true, you have to be fair also. And when you are resorting to this technique, you are on a drive of incomes, smoothening. You have smoothened your income, that is fine. But what about the stakeholder? You are actually, hiding everything from them, which is not at all acceptable or tolerable. Now what happened? The SEC investigated and fined Dell Incorporates and its senior executives for failing to disclose material information to investors. That whatever is material, whatever is called as important information for investors, if you are hiding that, what will happen? That will not be tolerated. That is something wrong. And they used fraudulent accounting to make it falsely appear that the company was consistently meeting Wall Street earnings targets. And they were, not only this, they were reducing their operating expenses also. So in a complaint, what happened? In a complaint to the US District Court, the SEC alleged that between 2002 to 2005, the company maintained a number of cookie jar reserves to manage its financial results. So they were trying to manage their financial results by creating a number of cookie jar reserves, which is not acceptable, which is not expected from them. And if it is not expected from them, how can we accept it that you are creating a cookie jar? So if a company is trying to create a secret reserve, so cut short the story, you can you recall this cookie jar accounting as cookie jar reserve as a company creating a secret reserve. Without, obviously if it is secret, it can't be an open secret. Secret means you're not informing it to the stakeholders. And your prime duty as an accountant is whatever is the plight of the company, whether company is having good times or it is facing bad time or worse time, whatever is there that need to be disclosed to the stakeholders. They should be aware that what is the ground reality of my company. Whatever profits you are showing, whether it is correct or not, whether company is actually having that much of profit or not. But what company did, it maintained excess accruals in multiple reserve accounts, and they used the same to offset financial statements effect to future expenses. So they were maintaining excess accruals in multiple reserves account, and it was basically used to offset financial statement effect to future expenses. The cookie jars were interestingly maintained in different names called strategic funds, corporate contingencies, restructuring reserve, reserve for bonus and profit sharing. So these were lucrative names, attractive names, catchy names which were used by the company to maintain this cookie jars, and they call it strategic funds. What is the point of creating a strategic fund? If you are creating, show it to the investors. Inform your investors, discuss it in the board meeting. If your intentions are not wrong, what is the point of hiding? And in accounting, if you are explaining, no matter whether you are incurring losses or making profit, whatever is the situation, that need to be reported. And during good period, what they did, this company did, they excess amounts were credited to these reserves, and some of them they were used in future periods to misstate its operating expenses as a percentage of revenue, to which they called as OPEX ratio, that is operating expenses ratio. And the company, when it came to for the company to justify that, company said that the reduction in operating expenses ratio to cost reduction initiatives or a focus on cost control. They said we are able to control our cost just because of our initiatives, or since we have started focusing on cost controls, that's why our operating expenses are declining. But what was being done by the company? They were trying to make use of the profit which was earned by the company in previous years. So in fact, the reported OPEX ratio during this period by the company was impacted by accounting manipulations. Another term for shenanigans, we also call it accounting manipulations, and manipulations are not allowed in accounting in any manner. So this is about the cookie jar accounting. It means, in a way, company is creating a secret reserve, and they have resorted to these kind of shenanigans, and obviously the action was taken against those companies. The next one is big bath accounting. The name itself indicates that there is a big bath in accounting. if you are going for some massive one-time writing off of assets or expenses, we term it as big bath accounting. So in accounting, what kind of bath can be called as, big bath? So it refers to the massive one-time writing off of assets and expenses. You decided to write off your assets or expenses, and that the quantum or the flow is massive. You decided to write off most of the assets which were there in the balance sheet, which were there on account of intangible assets or fictitious assets. Obviously you have to write it off, but you need to write it off rationally. What if you decided to write off everything in 1 year, in one go? What is the motive? Your company, you are saying that these are dead assets, I am going to rationalize the size of balance sheet. That is all fine, but what is the need of doing so in one go? What is the motive? Because what matters here is, in case of Shenanigan, is the intention, is the motive. So if you are going for massive one-time writing off of assets and expenses, that is wrong. Writing off of intangible assets or fictitious assets, nobody is stopping you. It is being done in accounting. But what if you are going for a massive drive? You decided to go for one-time cleaning of your balance sheet. What is the need of it? It actually called as big bath accounting, and it involves advanced recognition of expenses and losses, and is justified by unscrupulous management. They are trying to somehow justify as a cleaning up exercise or as a conservative approach. They themselves are giving it a name of cleaning up exercise, rationalizing the size of my balance sheet. You decided to go for it, but the question is, what is prompting you, what is instigating you to go for having this kind of one-time drive of cleaning up? What is the need of that? Were earlier previous accountants were not intelligent enough to look into it? Was it not required previously? If so, why didn't they perform it? So if you are doing a cleaning up drive, most of the CFOs who are very aggressive, when they join a company, in order to get some incentives or appreciation from the management, they very often come with this kind of excuse that we are on a cleaning up drive. Whosoever was working previously was not doing anything. I am the one who is able to find out, able to detect all frauds, all problems. And what the company is doing, company is taking a big hit in the current period by accruing higher expenses, writing off all the assets which are of fictitious nature or intangible category, and they are recording the liabilities also. But yes, when they are doing so, obviously once you have cleaned everything which was not good, which was behaving as a which was actually a kind of burden for the company, once you have eliminated everything in one go, obviously you are going to have a positive profit in future, because there is no liability. Whatever was there, you have written off in one go, in one shot, you have deleted everything. So obviously you are having all positive things with yourself. So in future you can say that yes, this is because of my Midas touch, by my own hard work, I have created this much of profit, and I am trying to showcase in front of management that see, it is me as an accountant who is doing everything. But try to remember, accountant has nothing to do with the profitability. Accountant is only there to record it, whatever is going on. It is the performance of marketing department or other departments also. They are actively selling out the goods. What if they are not selling goods? Can you do it by accounting only? No. There is an integration of all transactions, all entries. So we will have to first understand, when a company is going for taking a big bath and eventually showing in the very next year that now we have improved from minus 10 crore rupees to plus 5 crores, and now company has completed a journey of 15 crore rupees. We have written off the loss of 10 crores, and now we are a company which has made a profit of 5 crores. So effectively making a profit of 15 crores. It cannot be done overnight. It's not only one person job. This is something which we'll have to understand. So if we go into the aerial view, you will understand. If you will not get biased with the performance of that company, you will definitely catch hold of the person who is doing so. So big bath is very often practiced in the face of expected poor results. Very often I quote this thing in front of my students that, in a semester system, suppose you have 5 papers and in the first very paper your performance was very bad, and you thought that in any case, no matter what comes, I will not be able to pass in this paper, and you understand that your marks are going to be 0. So you feel that if in one paper it is gone, and this happens especially in case of professional courses. So students are coming and telling me, sir, since in first paper the performance was very poor, second was also bad, so I thought of taking a big bath. I thought of thinking that if I am failing the exam, I should do it properly. Even the failure should be very proper. I should be excellent into the failure. This is the kind of mindset which a student is having after finding the situation to be uncontrollable. That I cannot control, I don't have control, my control is not left now, it is not with me now, because 2 papers are gone, and in remaining 3 papers, even if I pass, then 2 result will be fail. The same thing happened in case of companies also. They take a big bath and they often practice it when they are finding loss, expected poor results on their face, that yes, it is about to come. So since the company in any case is likely to disappoint the market, so they think of disappointing them properly. They know that we are going to disappoint the shareholders, the market, by missing the earning expectations. We know shareholders are expecting a return of 10% and we are going to incur a loss of 20%. So the management decides to take a big bath by writing off the higher expenses and assets. They take a big bath. They think that if investors are disappointed, already they are disappointed. So either I'm showing them a loss of 1,000 crores or I'm showing a loss of 1,500 crores. It hardly matters. So this is the very reason why companies are resorting to big bath accounting, and it is also associated with a change in management or CEO. If you look into the different cases which were caught previously, you will find that the most popular reason, the most important reason was the change in management. Big baths have very often been resorted to by the companies when there was a change in the management, or there was a change in CEO, or there was a change in CFO. So if the KMPs, if there is any change into key managerial personnel, that is KMPs, obviously the companies which are showing greater amount of losses, they may be a victim of this big bath accounting. So the new management, why they are doing so? The new management may decide to write off assets and investments or make large provisions towards anticipated losses or expenses, so that in future they can show that since our management is very efficient, or it is very working day and night, working very hard, and that is why we have come to this success story. So they very often go for this kind of big bath accounting, and this way they are successful in blaming for the poor reported earnings, and it is shifted to the previous management. All blame of brickbats are being forwarded to the previous management, and the new management is assured of better performance in the future. They are saying that we are not doing anything wrong, it is only because of the previous management, and since now we have taken it over, we are going to show you the better results. So it is very often found or observed that in case of change in management of any corporate entity, there is a great chance of new team coming up with this case of this way of the illegally resorting to the technique of big bath accounting. So this can be termed as a practice which is very often resorted to by the companies when there is a change in the management of the company, and it may also help the company in evading taxes by declaring lower taxable income due to excessive write-offs. So company may also go for evading taxes. That is also illegal. So that can also be a case, that can also be a motive behind doing so. So there is a cable operating company which is named as XYZ TV, writing off impairment of losses from general reserves, and it is again another real life case. During the year 2010, the company transferred its non-DTH business. DTH means direct to home. So they were having some DTH income, some non-DTH income, and their non-DTH business along with assets and liabilities as on 31st March 2010 to one of its subsidiary companies. The same happened in case of Satyam also. There was a subsidiary company of Satyam called as Maitas Limited, and they tried to forward all those funds improperly to those subsidiary companies which were into the real estate. So the same happened in case of Satyam fiasco in India. But here in this company, what this company did, the excess of book value of net assets over the consideration received was directly adjusted. So whatever was the sale consideration, it was directly adjusted in the general reserves. Whereas the right way, as per the then applicable AS 28, at that time the applicable standard was accounting standard 28. What company did, it actually adjusted this general reserve, this consideration received from the general reserve account instead of accounting for impairment of fixed assets as required by AS 28. So they could have gone for showing it clearly that there is an impairment of fixed assets, and for that we are going to adjust this value. In place of doing so, what they did, they actually adjusted this value from the general reserve, which is not right. And the auditors, they in their opinion, they wrote clearly that had the company followed the above standard in the previous year, the loss on impairment of above fixed assets would have been adjusted in the consolidated PL account for the previous year. So company clearly found it in the auditor's report that company could have followed the right way as stipulated by the standard, but unfortunately company could not do so. The auditor, so here the auditor himself found, in the external audit, auditor found, in the statutory audit, auditor observed that in our opinion this is what company has done. So in this way I told you about the different techniques of shenanigans, although there is no end to these techniques, but the most popular one are recognition of revenue, channel stuffing, round tripping, what I told you, channel stuffing, round tripping, big bath accounting, and some new names can also emerge in due course of time. But although we may rest assured that in this era of IFRS, when the International Financial Reporting Standard has been implemented across the globe and most of the countries have happily adopted, although India has converged with this IFRS in the name of Ind AS, we have not adopted it completely. We have made certain modifications as per our own requirements. So in the next lecture I'll tell you what will happen to shenanigans in the era of IFRS. I will discuss with you the HBR paper, Harvard Business Review, popular paper title Where Financial Reporting Still Falls Short, along with the problems and solutions. So in this way we have discussed all the techniques of financial shenanigans. I hope you must have understood and enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.